All right, folks, I have been very anxiously awaiting the opportunity to interview our next guest, and he is a senior political analyst for Time Magazine. But perhaps more importantly, as we sit here, he is the co-author, along with John Heilemann, of Double Down, Game Change 2012, and we welcome in Mark Halperin. Hello, Mark.
Steve, you're a fantastic host in every sense of the word.
And by the way, who am I, right? No, thank you. I appreciate you coming on. All right, let's start with the news of the day, which has really sent shockwaves through, I won't say the left, but I guess through everybody. And that is Bill Clinton saying in a web interview that even if you have to change the health care law, or he has to change it, Barack Obama should keep his word and make sure the people losing their health care get to keep it. Now, you write in your book about what Bill Clinton has said in the past about Obama. What was the purpose of Bill Clinton saying this today in your mind?
Well, Steve, one of the great things about doing these books, first Game Change and now Double Down, is the stories never end. This is like the next chapter in the Bill Clinton-Barack Obama relationship. They start out estranged, coming out of 2008 and the beginning of the Obama administration. Barack Obama is not interested in Bill Clinton's advice, and Bill Clinton's desperate to be part of things. And then we've traced the flow of their relationship through a first initial round of golf that doesn't go so well. Remember, Bill Clinton made his comment about Mitt Romney's business record being sterling. Then he has him speak at the convention with an awesome speech that even Republicans working for Mitt Romney said were awesome. And then we get to election night, where Barack Obama gets his concession call from Mitt Romney declaring him the winner of the race, and the very first person he calls is Bill Clinton. So they ended that race pretty close. This chapter, you can parse what Bill Clinton said exactly, but he's a pretty cagey guy, sometimes a little rusty, but I think there's certainly, as we write about in the book, probably some back-channel talks going on now between those two camps to try to figure out how to, there's certainly, as we write about in the book, probably some back-channel talks going on now between those two camps to try to figure out how to...
That this is him telling us that this is what Hillary is going to tell us, and Hillary's going to run as far away from this as possible. And I just had Rick Santorum on, and that's his school of thought, and mine too. The other, though, possibility that I brought up was that this was orchestrated, if not orchestrated by the White House, maybe suggested in some kind of joint strategy session. So which do you think of the two is more likely?
Steve, I wouldn't want to guess without doing some more reporting on it, but I will say that as much as the Clintons and the Obamas have now sort of become, as we say at the end of Double Down, kind of one big super political family, it's still very difficult always to get inside Bill Clinton's head. Sometimes these public comments, as he did during the 2012 campaign, are intended to kind of push and prod and cajole in a way that he might not be able to do with direct contact. But other times, as much as he was a star in the 2012 campaign for the Democrats, he still can be a little rusty. He still can sometimes muse in public and in interviews in ways that can cause trouble. But you can bet that Hillary Clinton today is thinking about, boy, where does this leave us? Where does this leave me in terms of Obamacare, something she'll have to navigate, as any Democrat will who runs for president in 2016.
And, of course, one of the things I think you left out of the relationship of Bill and Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. I don't know if you went back to the primaries of 2008 in your timeline here. And, of course, when Bill Clinton called Barack Obama a Chicago street thug politician, saying that his story is I think something along the lines of the biggest fantasy ever. And as you point out in your book, I forget what point this was. Well, this was during the 2012 campaign. That Barack Obama's luckier than a dog with two, shall we say, wieners.
That's one way to say it.
Yes.
I like the word appendage, but
yeah, okay. Well, wieners become just like a Lewinsky kind of thing. But so anyway, so they do have, I think deep down, the history is not good, as you allude to, and we're going to see how this does play out. Let's move on, if we can. Something that struck me, it was what you write about Barack Obama. I think it's on page 39, if I'm not mistaken, talking about how he doesn't have patience for the professional left, and specifically black professionals, close to zero patience for professional blacks as opposed to black professionals, if I have it right. And I'm not sure what the difference is. Maybe you could explain it. And he doesn't like the Congressional Black Caucus much, with a couple of exceptions. Why? What do you attribute this to?
Well, look, one of the things I think people will look at this book to try to decode why the president's having so much trouble in the second term. And one problem he has is he ended the term with not that many allies, not just, of course, with Republicans and John Boehner and the other congressional Republicans, but also amongst a lot of Democrats. The president's from a different generation of African-American leaders, of the ones who've dominated politics, people like Jesse Jackson Sr., Charlie Rangel, congressman from New York. He's from a different generation, has a different style of politics, and he looked at them in some ways with as jaundiced an eye as he did at the Tea Party, as a bunch of people who were in politics for different motives than he was, with a different set of policy ideas. And we expose in the book the kind of jaundiced view he had about a lot of the, not just the kind of abstract type of African-American leaders who came before him, but very, very specific views of some of the specific leaders who are there now still on the stage.
But what you say they have the president and those people you mentioned that he doesn't particularly care for have a different style. How would you describe the president's style of governing when, as you alluded to, he doesn't have many allies, he doesn't have, you know better than me, many friends in the Congress, but Democratic or Republican certainly. He appears detached. He appears out of it. He appears uninterested or disinterested. So, I mean, am I right, or how would you describe the president's style, as opposed to the style that he doesn't like, as you said, or doesn't fit in with from the old guard?
Right. Well, if you think more broadly, not just about his use of the Black Caucus, Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah, overall.
There's a paradox with Barack Obama that comes out in the book, which is he loves government. He loves kind of solving policy problems, digging in national security issues, domestic policy, but he's not proven to be particularly good at it. On the politics side, he's great at politics. He's won 2 presidential races, including with the record he had in his first term, which some people thought would be difficult to do. But he's very good at it, but he doesn't like it very much. He does not like the kind of backslapping, log rolling, kind of nitty-gritty of politics, hanging out with people, the opposite of Bill Clinton, the opposite of somebody like Lyndon Johnson. And it's left him, the way he chose to run for re-election, victorious, but with, to some extent so far, a hollow victory where he doesn't have allies on either side of the aisle in Washington with the media in a way that allows him to govern successfully. And I think he's in peril here in the second term if he can't figure out a new way to deal with people.
Do you think, I know a lot could happen in a year, obviously, and it's a tough question, but if things stay the way they are right now, and Obamacare is a huge issue, could you foresee any Democratic senators who are up for re-election, or any Democrats in the House that want Barack Obama to come campaign for him or them?
Well, he definitely hanging in the balance there, and this fantasy that some Democrats have that the president's on track to win back control of the House, keep the Senate.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz for one, yeah.
Yeah, have this final term. Now, look, things can change, but I think historically you don't bet on a president in his 6th year winning House seats. And right now, the economy's doing a little better, but Obamacare is such a catastrophe in terms of its implementation. And the president is really causing distance between him and congressional Democrats. They've held tough so far. They've hung together so far. But you're starting to see Democrats up for re-election offering legislation. And I think that the balance of this term really depends on him getting the substance of it right, but holding his party together. And I think that's going to be increasingly difficult.
We're talking to Mark Halperin here on the Steve Malzberg Show. The book Double Down, Game Change 2012. It's the book everybody is talking about, and rightfully so. Let me ask you this: you don't talk much about race in the book as part of the a factor in 2012. If you watch, with all due respect, some of the left-wing cable networks, let's say, it's all about race. Anybody who criticizes the president, the Republicans hate him because they can't stand a black man in the White House. They don't understand or remember, of course, that Bill Clinton was impeached by the Republicans. Last time I looked, he was white. They don't particularly care for Hillary Clinton. Last time I looked, she was white as well. But in the book, there's not much written about race. Is that because it was basically a non-factor, and is it made too much of by some in the to the left in the media?
Well, I'll just take a little bit of issue with the notion that we don't write about race in the book. We do. You brought up his use of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah.
We talk about an incident involving Rev Wright that where race was certainly at play there, as a group of Republicans thought about using that as an issue.
Right.
I think, look, is there racism in America? Yes. Are there people who don't like the president because of his race? Yes. He got elected twice as president of the United States. I think the notion that race is some sort of absolute barrier to political success is just wrong. Proof's in the pudding. He's gotten elected twice.
So would you agree with me that some on the left in the media carry it too far? And I think from the beginning, setting the tone that if you dare disagree with Barack Obama, or you're against him, especially if you're in the media on the right or a Republican, that it must be race, and they've carried that through. Do you agree with that?
I think there's no contradiction between saying that race is still a problem in America, that some people don't like the president because of his race, and also saying that sometimes people bring that up in ways that are not only inaccurate, but I don't think constructive.
Okay, let me ask about Chris Christie finally, and thank you for being generous with your time. Here's a guy who just won a landslide election. He was none too happy that his confidential information allegedly got out to you guys, and about why Mitt Romney, what they found out when they dug into his past as part of the vetting process. Is it your opinion that what was uncovered by the Romney campaign and is documented in your book will be used by the Democratic opposition should Chris Christie become a serious contender for the 2016 nomination?
I don't think it'll just be used by Democrats. I think it'll be used by a lot of Republicans too. Governor Romney looked at the vetting file he got from the lawyers and the researchers looking at Christie's background, and they found stuff that is often, or much of which is in the public record, but is clearly going to be an issue if Governor Christie gets on the national stage. Mitt Romney doesn't always show the best political instincts. I think everybody learned that in 2012. But he did say to one of his guys who said, look, this stuff's been looked at in New Jersey. And Governor Romney said, doesn't matter. You get on the national stage, you look at issues like Whitewater or George Bush's drunk DWI or Rev Wright, stuff that's not an issue, even politically competitive, politically tough states, becomes an issue if you're picked for vice president, if you run for the nomination. So all these things, Governor Christie working as a lobbyist for Bernie Madoff, Governor Christie's health, Governor Christie's business background before he got into public service, all these things are going to be looked at if he runs, and he knows that. And you never know. It's both the facts of what's in there, which Governor Romney was somewhat concerned about, but it's also how the press handles it, how the candidate handles it. If Governor Christie runs, you take tough scrutiny with his propensity to sometimes be, let's say, a little bit emotional, a little bit colorful in his language in public. That could be a combustible combination. That could be it right there. How he handles that will be a big issue if he decides to run for president. And I think people can look at the book and some of the specifics of the allegations and think about how those might play out on a national stage.
Let me ask you one more. We got less than 2 minutes. For the same reason Republicans didn't dare bring up Rev Wright, which I think is a huge mistake, they didn't dare bring up the president's own words about the drug use that he had as a kid. I mean, getting in the van, closing the window so the smoke wouldn't get out, and stealing the joint so he would get an extra turn at taking a drag on the cigarette or whatever, and how he admitted he wasted his youth and he got high and everything. When, as you mentioned, a drunk driving incident from George Bush in his past, or he used drugs once in the National Guard or whatever that story was, unattributable. Here in his own words, Obama says, I did it. Why was that never an issue?
Well, look, I think that we do have different standards for people in public life. It's inconceivable that someone with that admitted use of drug history would have been elected a generation ago or less. But the Republican Party chose not to make it an issue. I think voters today, not across the board, but in large measure, are forgiving of youthful indiscretions. And Barack Obama was relatively upfront about it. So, if John McCain had made a big issue of it, I think the press would have followed along.
All right.
But chose not to.
Mark, thank you. Double down, Game Change 2012. Mark Halperin. I hope you'll come back, sir. Thank you very much.